y'all, it is Nikki. Welcome back to the channel where today I'm talking about one of my biggest plot pet peeves ever and how I almost brought it into my story. It's funny because this pet peeve almost like runs in my family. Like I've had extensive conversations with my brother about this, but picture this. You have a group of characters traveling on a quest to save the world or like take down the evil president or something, and one of them acquires really important information that could be vital to the mission. It would be really helpful if the whole group knew this, and it could really affect the course of the entire story. The logical and right thing to do, regardless of the cost to the person, would be to share this information with the group. But do they? No, they don't. They keep it to themselves for some flimsy reason, and then a bunch of bad things happen, or the villains get the upper hand, or whatever goes down, and then there's a big explosive scene where the truth comes out and everyone's like, what? Why didn't you tell us? All because one person didn't share information when they probably should have. This drives me crazy. Seriously. Secrecy for the sake of drama, especially when there's just not really a good reason for keeping the secret or withholding that information. Classic example. I feel like this happens all the time in stories. I'm dying, but I'm not going to tell my loved ones about it. Sometimes it can be for a good reason, but often I feel like it's just like, oh, I don't want to worry them, or I want them to stay focused on the mission at hand. Like, what? No, tell your loved ones that you're dying. When they do have a good reason for withholding pertinent information, that is a different story. It totally can be done. In one story I just watched, a character had done something really, really awful in the past, and she didn't want someone she cared about to know about it because it would totally like affect their relationship. Fair enough, I get that. The difference was, I feel like this information or her secret wouldn't really have like a huge effect on the immediate problems. Like it wouldn't help them to solve the crisis ahead. It wouldn't make or break the situation. So I do feel like it was okay for her to keep that secret because it was relevant, but not like crucial. But what about when it is crucial? Like, is there ever a good enough reason for a character to withhold super important information from other characters just to create drama or conflict in the story? Short answer, yes, there can be a good enough reason. It can be done. Of course it can be done. But I do feel like it has to be done right. Otherwise, if your readers are anything like me, like we'll just be annoyed. Hilariously, I actually wrote myself into a corner recently and found myself gearing up to do this exact thing in my story. Like this exact pet peeve that just drives me crazy and that I never like in stories. I was getting ready to do the exact same thing. First class hypocrite, right here. I had two characters traveling together. One learned something really important that would have been really useful for them both to know, and he didn't really have any good reason to not tell other than I didn't want him to tell. Here's the thing. Like any writer, I really like explosive, dynamic moments between characters, so I was looking forward to that the truth comes out scene where character A can say, don't you get it? This is happening, and then character B can say, what the beans? Why didn't you tell me this? And it'll be volcanic and snippy and full of conflict and mutual distaste, and it'll really ramp up that angst between these two characters going into the climax. That is exactly what I wanted. And that's all fine and good, but in order to do that, I had to fix my first problem, which was what reason could possibly be good enough for character A to withhold this information. I had a few ideas that I was tossing around, and some of these just examples work in lots of other contexts and lots of other stories. For one, maybe he physically can't tell, like there's some sort of supernatural restraint on him or command on him that prevents him from sharing this information. That's a pretty neat one because you can't really blame the character for not sharing in that instance. The one problem that I think it can have, and that I sometimes notice, is when the characters just then don't put any effort in. Like, okay, even if you're under some sort of like command not to tell, I feel like you could still try to get the message across in other ways, but in lots of stories, they just don't try. And that just doesn't play well for me. There's also the blackmail option, like somebody or something you care about will get hurt if you tell, which again, super neat. That completely solves the problem because of course we totally get that. It doesn't really work in my context though, because this character doesn't have a ton of people that he super cares about. Also, the key problem, the villain doesn't care if he tells. She's like whatever about it. So if he doesn't share this information, it's not because someone is forcing him not to, it's because he's just choosing not to. So then there's also the possibility that he just doesn't want to share this information, which would be in his character because he's not crazy about the guy that he's traveling with, but at the same time, it's just practical info that would be useful all around for everyone to know. The villain doesn't care if he tells, there's no real reason for him not to tell, and it would be better for everyone if he told. You see my dilemma. I'm trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and to create this the truth comes out moment for drama and conflict even when there's no good reason for it. So in times like these, I find it best to turn to my story consultants. Fortunately, it was like 11 at night or something, so my little brother didn't have anything better to be doing, and I was able to corner him, and this is kind of how our conversation went. I need a good reason for character A to not share important information with character B. I mean, it would be way easier if he did just say, hey bro, this is happening, thought you should know, but I just really want to create that dramatic moment later where the truth comes out and then they're both super mad at each other. Yeah, I hear ya. I think the solution is to not do that. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best answer. And sometimes ideas just don't work. As soon as he said that, I was like, sigh, he's totally right. I am just trying to do something purely for the sake of creating conflict and drama, which is a huge no-no for me. Generally, my rule is if it doesn't have a logical reason and if it's purely a plot device, don't do it. As an aside, this is why it is super helpful to have people in your life to bounce ideas off of who are more distant from your story than you are, because they will see weaknesses where you can't. I have one brother who is the details guy. Like, he just gets bombarded with story ideas and like the complexities of the story and helps me work through some of the more nuanced problems. Man, we once spent like months trying to figure out how to get my MC out of a tunnel. What a gem. I cannot thank God enough for my awesome brothers. This particular brother who helped me in this situation actually knows comparatively little about the story, which was good in this situation. He didn't know all the context or the details or the threads that I'm desperately trying to weave together. He just hears the basics. There's a character who has important information and isn't sharing it for like no reason. That's dumb. Don't do that. It might not sound helpful, but that perspective actually is super helpful. Did it solve my problem? Not completely. It did in the sense that I ditched that sort of the truth comes out plotline, but it also created a problem in that now I needed to figure out how character B was going to react. And would this make him trust character A more? Probably, which I don't want. There's still a lot of story ahead of me before these two characters can become bros. There's a lot of conflict that needs to happen in their relationship, so I don't want them to trust each other too soon. My challenge then was to make this information come out in a way that creates more conflict instead of creating trust. I'm still chipping away at this problem, but my working solution for right now is that the two characters approach the information differently. Character A, oh my gosh, it is exhausting having to say character A, character B all the time, but I don't want to say their names yet. Character A just wants to run as far away from the threat as possible, while character B kind of wants to turn around and run back towards it. Both of them are like justified and have pretty solid reasons, but the conflict arises from them realizing that they're not on the same page and the reader seeing what lengths they're willing to go to in order to make sure things go their way. Very, very different from what I initially had planned for this whole sequence of scenes. Honestly, guys, I'm like 4 scenes into part 4 and I'm already deviating from my outline. What is wrong with me? There is good news though. In ditching that old plotline that was not going to work, I actually opened the door for a bunch of kind of new plot possibilities that I'm pretty excited about and that have actually allowed me to change the trajectory of the story a few times, kind of jerk the reader around a little bit. I'm excited about that because that is something I was also talking to my brother about and something I'd like to do a future video about. For now, suffice it to say that I think it can be good to sort of change directions a few times and keep the reader on their toes, and that sometimes by ditching old ideas that aren't working and just looking for the simplest ones that are staring you right in the face, we can achieve that. Also, I still get to keep my dramatic conflict moment later on, just instead of it being character B going, why didn't you tell me? It'll be character A saying, aren't you listening? Didn't you hear what I told you? So still conflict, just different and a little more logical. Changes are part of the creative process. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe, comment below with how you feel about the Truth Comes Out plot lines, and as always, remember to spend some time in the clouds today.